It essentially like saves both of our files locally and then sends them live. So we'll both sound like sometimes if the internet messes up, it can mess up the
Oh, I
recording.
see.
But that's yeah, I feel like I didn't explain that. But yeah, man, it's pretty cool. Um but yeah, so let me think. Okay, so I've never talked about flow or poi or anything on the podcast before. So I'm gonna start with kind of like some basic questions. But like, what is flow and what is poi?
Well, flow, I guess in general is like the way that I see it is like the flow state, the mindset you can get into if you're doing like getting into a hobby, you're playing soccer, you're playing an instrument. That's what flow to me is. When it comes to like flow arts and poi and like different props, it's using that flow state to manipulate like a ball on a string or a staves on fire or there's a whole bunch of different things, different props,
Mm-hmm.
fans, all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the flow state, you can kind of get there anyway, like you were saying, instrument or even like if you're working or, doing anything. But then the flow sports, they're like in the specific category of that flow state, right? Because I feel like they all share like similar patterns and stuff,
Yeah.
right? So what
There's
kind
like
of
there's
umbrella do you put around those sports? Yeah.
the way that it's been explained to me by like a lot of my flow arts friends is there's different categories. There's like juggling, which is like a very
Mm-hmm.
technical type of manipulation where you have juggling balls, clubs, rings, hula hoops, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and those all fit into a very European style of flow arts. And then there's what's like a new age type of flow art, which is manipulating different props like poi, which is ancient in its origin, but the way that people are relating to it now is more um, new age with learning how the shapes kind of come together, how the 3D space around you can be manipulated, all that stuff. So not so much juggling. So those are kind of the two genres, I guess you could say, is juggling and then the flow arts or the pure like manipulation of a prop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I actually never thought about how juggling was basically the same thing as well, as poi and all these different things. So then, what? Let's just start with like when did you get into poi? Like who introduced you? How did you start? How did you begin doing this?
Yeah, so I started about 10 years ago, 2000, like the end of 2011, 2012. And
Mm-hmm.
a buddy of mine who had come up from, he had moved up to Northern Virginia from Florida, and he was into poi. I'm not actually sure how he got into it, mostly from like the rave scene, glow sticking, that type of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
when he came up, we um, are we allowed to talk about psychedelic stuff on this, or I don't know
Sure.
your
Yeah, you can talk
opinion?
about it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we can talk
he
about
he
anything.
had yeah, he had brought this up to us, and when we had you know gotten together, all of our friends and all this stuff, and we were having an experience of the psychedelic kind, and he kind of just whipped him out one day, and was like, hey, let me show you guys something while we're in this
Mm-hmm.
enlightened kind of state. And it blew all of our minds, because it's not something that we've ever seen before. Um, and
Yeah.
all of our friends were like, "This is awesome. Teach us how to do this." And he was pretty good at the time. He was like at an intermediate level. Um, so we all kind of jumped on it. And at the time, I was like not really into it. I was still young, and I was trying to find out like, oh, what do I actually want to do in life and this type of stuff. And when all your friends do something, you're like, okay, I might as well try it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then my brother and a whole bunch of my other friends, they're a bit older than me, so they went off to college and they were doing all this other stuff, and I was basically alone, and so I just practiced every day. I would get home from school and practice, get home from college, practice on the campus, all this stuff. And yeah, basically just turned it into kind of like my own little meditation practice. And then some of my friends dropped off, and I would watch YouTube videos and kind of just learn how to do it. It's been a journey.
Mm. Dang. So you were already into this in high school then, going into college.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And then, so I met you through the Flow Club, and I think you actually taught me most of what I know. So first of all, like, thank you for, you were basically a mentor to me,
you're,
I feel like, for 2 years. I don't know
you're
if you
welcome.
wanted me to be there, but I would just show up at this club and like watch you and watch
No,
all the crazy moves and patterns you were doing.
I think
Yeah.
everyone was
But,
definitely welcome. Hmm.
hmm but did you help like create the foundation of that Flow Club then, or because if you knew about Flow in high school, I'm surprised because like that's kind of what introduced me, or was that already established when you got to JMU?
Yeah, so the way, from my recollection, was Taylor. You remember Taylor?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
she she and my brother, who was at school before me, they founded
Oh,
the
okay.
Flow Club. So my brother had
Okay.
already been practicing poi and all this stuff, and they brought it together. And then when I got there, after my brother graduated, um, Taylor was still doing it, and she was closer to uh, my grade. So
Mhm.
it was easy to just kind of jump in and then help her out, kind of doing what my brother was doing, um, scheduling stuff and all that.
Nice. Okay. Was it start off like small, like 5, 10 people, I guess?
Yeah, it was Taylor and her two friends, and then me and Heather, and then we just started collecting people. Basically, I knew some other people from school who I was like, oh, you, and then you came, and then Heather's boyfriend, and then some other Heather's friends. A lot of it was like friends of friends, and then you meet people at a
Mhm.
party, and you're like, hey, you like this thing that I do? You should come and hang out with us because we. So yeah, it was
Mhm.
just kind of like word of mouth, and then people started coming. They would join the Facebook group, and then whenever we had a thing and they were free, it was never like an obligation to come or anything. But people
Mhm.
seemed to enjoy coming and just chilling out.
Yeah, man. I think I joined when there was like 20, 25 people, and like by the time I left, it was 45 or 50 or something, man. There were certain days there'd be like 60 people there at the right time in spring, you know?
When we went outside, I remember we had uh,
Mm-hmm.
a big session outside where we had a whole bunch of people coming out. We took a picture. I forget, it's probably on Facebook somewhere, but yeah, it's definitely got up there. Now I
Mm-hmm.
don't even after me and Taylor left, it was like I don't even know if they have a flow club anymore. Um, our
I know.
generation.
Actually, when I started looking for people to hit up for the podcast, I went to that Flow Club and I was kind of hoping it would like be still active. And then I noticed I was like, "Oh, someone didn't someone hasn't posted in here in like 4 years." Okay.
Yeah,
Uh whatever. So that was a little bit of a letdown, but anyways, what okay, I feel like for a listener who doesn't understand what poi is, I feel like maybe we're not doing the best job of explaining it. So it's two poi is technically two balls on a string, right? And you spin it around, and uh, you know, they usually come in like light up kind of colors if you can find one, or they can be done on fire, right? I feel like most people might resonate with someone spinning fire ropes around would be
yeah,
kind
like
of like
in
the classic
Hawaii. So
example. Yeah.
yeah, it comes from the origins of poi specifically come from Polynesian culture. There's a group of people called the Maori, and the word
Okay.
poi is a Maori word that means ball on string. So that was the
Okay.
origin, and it was a very traditional type of dance, mostly done by women. Men would
Mm.
also do it to build up forearm strength for hunting, but the traditional is very ceremonial, a lot of simple patterns, things like that. I'm doing it for whatever reason. I'm not an expert on it, but I know kind of a little bit. Nowadays, the more modern poi is an exploration of the art style of it using LEDs as instead of
Mm.
like a ball on the end of the string, or fire, kind of like they would do in Hawaii where they spin fire. So,
Hmm. Yeah, man. It's so. I mean, just thinking about it, it probably is ancient. It probably goes back to before there was any written, written data about anything. So I assume it was not too hard to put two strings on two rocks or something, you know?
yeah, it's like, what fun do we have to do, back when there's no entertainment,
Yeah,
you know? So I
yeah. It
get
probably
that,
was the
yeah.
coolest form of entertainment. Yeah,
Oh,
because
for
there was
sure.
something in me that felt it. It felt like an instinct, right? It's almost, I don't know. Can you explain like when you're first learning it? It's like realizing you have a third arm or something, or like an extra sense that you didn't know you have because all of a sudden your body like learns these patterns and you hit yourself 20 to 50 times and like
Hmm.
your muscle memory just knows to never do that again, and then you just, I don't know, can you say anything to like how the body learns tricks and kind of like, I don't know, maybe anything to like the psychology behind it?
Yeah, the way I can explain, like, the way that I conceptualize it, right, is that when you're learning when you're learning how to spin poi, it's almost like it's an extension of your arms, right? Because it's a
Mm-hmm.
extra amount of string extending out to a ball, and you spin it in a circle, and you don't want to hit yourself. And when you hit yourself, your body kind of gets conditioned to, oh, don't do it that way because it hurts, or it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel comfortable. Um, and I think that over time, when you start to learn about how you can manipulate the balls in the space around you, it's kind of like you're experimenting with the shape of the space, of
Mm-hmm.
what reality is. The air around you has a shape that gravity allows it to fall and rise in a certain way. And it's kind of the manipulation of that fall of gravity and that rise back up on the other side in a circle that kind of, um, you can manipulate, turn it, twist it, all of that kind of stuff, as long as you do it in a way that the human form doesn't get in the way. So there are limitations when it comes to, uh, the human form, and you can't spin it a certain way because, oh, my elbow doesn't go backwards, or or I can't reach too far
Mm-hmm.
behind my back. But other than that, it's almost like the space around you is a playing ground for whatever shapes you want to do, and they're all fundamental shapes. You can do triangles, you can do, diamonds and squares and circles. That's like the basic shape. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, now that I've done it for so long, I'm able to kind of paint a picture of, oh, what do I want the viewer to see? I'm creating this art form where, just like painting, where I'm putting pigment on a canvas, I can say, I want to put the light in this area of the space around me, and I want it to look like this. So that's kind of how I think
Whoa.
about. Mm,
That's so cool, man. I don't know if I ever got to that point. Like I was still very much living inside the world, when I was performing. Like I didn't have the foresight to think about how exactly it was going to look from the,
hmm
the audience's perspective. That's really cool.
And that's
I guess
actually
especially
that's the biggest thing
sorry.
about that. When I was learning, was like, online, when you're reading about it, everyone's like, oh, look in a mirror, watch yourself in a mirror, because that's how you learn what it looks like. you know so
Mhm.
when I do, like, there's a one of the simple patterns is a 4 pedal anti-spin.
Mhm.
And so it looks like, basically, the cardinal directions, 4 points, north, south, east, west. And when
Mhm.
when you look at it for the first time, you can tell, oh, my south point or my bottom point is too much to the right or the left, or my side points aren't far enough out. So that's kind of how you
Mhm.
can visualize what it's supposed to look like.
Oh yeah. It's like all coming back to me, man, cuz I haven't done this in a minute. I'm just remembering now, like the 4 pedal is a classic one, and like the 3 pedal, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there was
Triketra,
even a
yeah.
5. Yeah, yeah. what other like shapes do you kind of progress through, or like maybe moves? Because I remember there's like a 2 beat, right, where you go like right over left, and then all of a sudden you learn a 3 beat, which is like right over left over right again, and then you
Yeah,
start to
so
be
it
able to like open that up to the pedal, right? Once you do it kind of on with your arms open, you know? Is
yeah,
that
so the way that we start out when we teach someone is like, spin them at your sides, right next to your shoulders. And then
mm-hmm.
after you do that, you want to be able to cross them opposite of each other. So you just cross in front, and then after that, you can do what's called split time. So instead of same time where they're going da 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 at the same time, you do da da
Mm,
da 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 da. And then you learn how to cross like that, and it's just kind of uh, you're compounding on that uh, original, just spinning it at the side. Um,
mm-hmm.
and they consider a couple different things when they're teaching, go into patterns, right? So when you are first learning out, you're doing what's called wheel plane, and wheel plane is just basically um, I'm standing straight at my audience and I'm spinning them at my sides. That's wheel plane. Now, wall plane is a little bit different. Wall plane would be I'm looking at my audience and I'm spinning it in front of myself and behind myself as opposed to at my
Mm-hmm.
sides. And wall plane is what is the foundation for those patterns, like the 4 pedal, the 3 pedal,
Hold
the
on.
the 5 pedal, all of
You
those
there?
things. Yeah, I'm here.
Can you say it again? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I was saying that
Just
the
the very last part.
yeah, I was saying that the wall plane is the fundamental for basically uh, the 4 pedal, the 3 pedal, and the 5 pedal, kind of what you were saying before, the more
Mm-hmm.
technical patterns. hmm
Yeah, I'm also remembering it was really helpful to practice in a mirror for
hmm
these pedals and stuff,
Or a
right? You almost
window.
have to.
Yeah.
A window. Yeah,
hmm
yeah. Dang. Okay, so then once you get like a lot of these patterns down, how does this like link up with music kind of for you? Like how does music play a role in the way you perform or learn to poi?
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple ways to kind of combine music with it. If you're someone who is more mathematically brained, you like the math around it, the shapes, geometry, all that stuff. You might think that, oh, each point of the shape goes to a beat, right? Or you can think of it as every downbeat goes to the beat. Sometimes that's how I think about it. You can also do it like there are a lot of friends who I have who um, are more of like on the flow aspect, not so much technical, and they'll say, I'll move my body in a certain way to the beat, and not so much
Mm-hmm.
emphasizing what the poi's doing, but what my dance is doing. So there are a couple different ways to think about how music combines with the flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. What kind of music do you like to listen to when you practice or perform? Like
Oh
what kind of
goodness.
artists?
I'm a fan of a lot of electronic music, um, down tempo music. But I mean, I could get down to metal. I could get down to basically anything, folk music, whatever. It just kind of depends. A lot of the events that I go to where I organize and teach at, they listen to drum and bass and down tempo and trance and all that kind of stuff, trap music, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a playlist that I used to listen to, and I think I probably was inspired by the club a lot. But I remember a lot of Flume and Papadozio and like
Also,
Odessa
jam music.
and
Yes.
Pretty Lights. Yeah, jam bands. Yeah, Frank was more into those than me, so I heard a lot of that just by living with him. But I guess Papadozio is kind of a jam band, right? Or no?
They're
I don't know.
electronic jam.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're
sir.
electronic jam, so
So
they definitely have those vibes in it. Also, like Umphreys McGee and Fish and all of those type of
Fish,
bands too.
yeah.
Hmm.
What was like the favorite your favorite concert that you've seen that you've performed at, like an audience or just practice in the audience?
Well, there are a couple different. I mean, I've been doing it for 10 years. I've had a spurt of maybe my fourth year was the first time that I ever did something professionally, right? Where I went to a festival. I was like either paid or got
Oh,
reimbursed to
whoa.
go, that type of thing. So
That's awesome.
I've like
I did not
spun,
know you
yeah. I
I
mean,
did not know
I
that you
did,
ever went like pro. That's sick.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome. Okay.
I've done like everything from I went to there's a festival called Rooster Walk, I think, and I that was a really cool experience that I was working at where I got to um, spin poi and double stabs and a whole bunch of different props for the Wailers, which is Bob Marley's son's band now. So
Well,
that was pretty fun experience.
so they asked you to come like set up at a certain area during the concert, and basically you got paid to perform.
Yeah, so the way it works is there's a fire arts production company, and the
Uh-huh.
guy who I was working with, he reaches out to different performers that he knows and says, "Hey, do you want to come? We can comp you a ticket, give you, free whatever merch, whatever it is, right?" A lot of the gigs are free. They basically give you a ticket to come, and then whatever other money you get, you work off of tips, basically. It's unfortunate that a lot of performers at festivals get what they call paid in exposure, which is a
Hmm.
completely different topic, but um,
Not
it's
cool.
yeah, and I think that those were kind of the some of the best experience I've ever had was working professionally at these festivals. My favorite was probably being at a really close indoor Papadosio concert, inside of like just a small little concert hall, and you know, some of the
Wait,
first times I ever, yeah.
was that in UVA,
It may have been,
Charleston?
yeah,
Bro,
yeah. It one
I
of
went
one,
to one of those.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were really
Like
fun.
our junior or senior year or something. I went to one of those. That was I'm that actually is crazy because I haven't been to many of those type of concerts before. So for that to be your favorite, that kind of blows my mind because I obviously had a great time there, but that's the only time I've seen Papadosio or even really done a significant amount of poing, like
It's
in mid concert.
it's so close quarters that
Uh huh.
when you're spinning, and they don't allow you to do this anymore where you're spinning in between people inside the venue itself, but that was when I
Oh
kind of
wow.
first had the realization of how far my poi are actually extending, because you can spin it in between you know 50, 60, 70 people, and
Mm-hmm.
you know not hit anybody is a challenge, so I enjoyed like the challenge of doing
Mm-hmm.
that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Those things were not like packed like sardines, but they were crowded enough to kind of be. You got to be really careful. Do people? I think I know the answer to this, but do people ever compete for poi, or is that against the nature of what it is?
They do. There are different competitions in parts of the U.S. Not many at all. Um, I think that the overall sentiment is that it's an art form for now, um, and to judge someone's art form is kind of, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where you don't really want to say that someone is bad at art. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we want to
No.
encourage expression and encourage people to grow and learn and stuff like that. So there are definitely competitions, but
Mm-hmm.
not so much as there are places and events to teach people and to show people fire safety and different performance techniques, and all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. When you did the Bob Marley's Son concert, were you doing fire the whole time?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, nice. Have you ever gotten hurt doing that or seen someone?
I've I've never gotten hurt personally. Um, I remember one year I got a chain burn. So like I used to have poi that had
Ooh,
metal chains on them at the very end, and I had wrapped it around my arm, but it wasn't bad at all. But I've seen people who have like huge, 6-inch burns on their arms from, getting caught in their props.
ouch.
Or a big thing also is some people who have like fire fans, which it's basically a ring that you hold in your hand that has spokes that come out of it. So being
Whoa.
so close proximity to your hand, you need to wear gloves. So I've seen some people get hand burns, but me personally, no, I haven't. Um, there are also there are also things online that I've seen from friends of friends where people have died from doing performances and stuff like that. So it does happen. It just depends on
Mm-hmm.
your fire safety crew. You have to have people who know exactly what they're doing, and you gotta be safe about
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of the thrill, though. I feel like once you get to a certain level, you have to do a little bit of fire to, I mean, you've gotten so good at this thing, you might as well feel the heat. Because I think I did it
And
once or
it's hot.
twice. Oh yeah, and it's scary. I remember I was the one time I did it. I like was doing whatever trick. They both go inwards on each other,
Yeah, the
and the two
butterfly.
collided. Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
butterfly, exactly. And they didn't hit me, but they hit each other in midair and collided, and like one of them shot right at me, and I like dodged it, and I was like, okay, that's enough. I'm good. I'm gonna go back to the light up ones.
Yeah, it's something that. So I started fire probably a year and a half into learning poi. Like you said, super simple stuff. It's scary at the beginning, but the thing about it that you learn quickly is that um, if you're using the correct type of fuel and you have people who are safe and are being safety for you, I think that there's no way to you don't get engulfed in flame. You're not going to instantly light up. Most likely, what's going to happen is what's called a fuel transfer, where you swipe your clothing, and some of the fuel that's lit on fire gets transferred onto your clothing. But it's easy enough to just wipe it down, and you're fine. Um, and as long
Whoa.
as someone is watching you, they have calls for like um, if someone is safetying for you and they see that you're on fire, they'll call out to you what body part. And the best thing obviously to do is look. Oh, what am I doing? Um, the biggest thing of
Mm-hmm.
people who are new to fire safety, I've seen people who are like, who yell out, "You're on fire!" It's like, yeah, we know there's a fuck ton of fire here. What do you mean? Like, tell me where. So that's a big thing is knowing what calls to do, so that keep people safe.
Yeah, man, that's got to be crucial. Crucial. What about like advanced moves? So I remember you said there was like the pedal, and then when the pedals go reverse of each other, what was that called again? I feel like you
Yeah,
just
so
said it a
there's
couple. It's
like
like
there's basically two different forms of the pedals, right? The technical form of poi. There's what's called in-spin pedals, which are basically if you spin a ball in a string and you don't move your arm, that's a circle. If you move your arm and the poi in the same
mm,
direction, that's what's called in-spin. If you move the poi in one direction and your arm is moving in the opposite direction, that's what's called anti-spin. So it creates
mm,
two different looking patterns.
anti-spin. Yeah, yeah. I remember you could like have the two spinning around your head, and then all of a sudden you would bring them in on each other, right? And now your arms are going around the poi instead of the poi going around your arms, and you're doing that both like in reverse, and keeping it kind of like, I don't like a gear turned in on it on itself,
Yeah,
and then you could
yeah.
pop them back out. I never figured out how
That's
to do that one.
that one is they call that a fountain. So you can
Mm,
do with either in spin or anti spin. You can do um, a range of different types of like motions. A fountain would be with both hands moving in a circle, um, and so it kind of like you said looks like a gear turning around
mm-hmm.
in between your arms.
Dude, I love that name, man. What can we just talk about like more advanced moves and what the names are? Just because I don't know, they just
Yeah,
always have
I can
sick
list
names.
off a bunch of them for you if you want.
Yeah, just start list.
Uh,
Yeah, let's start listing moves, man.
um, and and here the thing about moves is like, they're named from, if some guy figures something out, they're like, oh, I think I'm gonna call it this, and then a
Mm-hmm.
more mathematical thinking person would say, oh, it would make more sense if we call it this because of whatever. But I think
Mm-hmm.
a couple things. There's isolation, which is basically the poi is moving the same equidistance around a circle that your hand is moving, so it looks like you're isolating in one spot. There's anti-spin and
Mm-hmm.
in-spin. Um, there is something called a toroid, which if
What's
you
that?
know about a toroid in physics is basically the shape of a donut turning in on itself through the center and
Mm-hmm.
out through the outside, like the magnetic field of the Earth is a toroid. But in
Okay.
poi, you can create that shape because we're living on this planet, so gravity allows us to, spin it in a way that looks like a toroid. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah,
I'm
you'd have to
imagining
see
it.
it. Hmm.
I mean,
Um,
I probably have. Maybe I can, but I don't know about other people. But I know what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah. Just Google toroid, and you'll see what I mean. Um,
Okay.
there's also there are different types of weaves. A weave is basically that first thing I was talking about, where you spin them at your side and you cross them in front of you. When your arms cross, that's what we call a weave. Um, there
Mm-hmm.
are uh, there are tracers. A tracer is if you hold out your arm and you spin it, tracing around your body. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, like the way that people learn is they'll spin it. They'll hold their arm out and they'll spin it with their hand on their arm and just kind of slowly move down their arm, and then you get better at it and you can decide how many spins I want to do around my body. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's something called a snake. A snake is it's like a tracer, but you're moving from, instead of tracing a body part, you're going from front to back, very close to the inside of your armpit, the
Oh
nape of your
yeah.
neck, that type of thing. Um, there is the corkscrew, which is it's a
Oh
type
yeah.
of weave that goes on the horizontal, so it goes from the top of your head to below your head, and you're doing like it looks like a corkscrew. Um,
Yeah, so wait,
yeah,
there's
there's
like three planes you can work with, right? There's the one plane where it's kind of like at your waist, like a table. Then there's the when it's on either side of you, right? Like kind of like you're boxed in. And then the third one would be like in front of you, like a wall, pressed in front of you, and you can trace them along these three different planes, right? Or is there more than three?
yeah, the way that they, I mean, technically there's an infinite amount, right? If you
Yeah, I
think
guess you could go
about it,
diagonal
if
and
I
stuff.
if I lean back, I'm creating a different
Mm-hmm.
plane. But the fundamental three are wheel plane, which is at my sides, wall plane, which is in front and behind me, and either ceiling or floor plane, which are the same thing, which is either above my head
Mm-hmm.
or below my head.
It's so
Um,
interesting because like in weight training they teach us about these same planes too, and you lift a lot of weights on the same kind of concept of planes. Um, There's a huge intersection there. Yeah, I just realized. But yeah, man. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, you did.
Well, that was all I had to say. But what is like an advanced like crazy trick like?
Yeah. So something that I've been messing with and recently is what is a concept called polyrhythm. Um,
Whoa.
so a lot of the beginner patterns that you learn are, both of my arms are doing the same thing, whether or not they're going opposite of each other or, split timing of each other. Those are all very
Mm-hmm.
simple concepts. Um, Once you get to the point where you're like, okay, I want one arm to do one thing, like I want it to do 3 pedals, and my left arm is going to do 4 pedals. That's when you get into a different type of uh, difficulty. So a lot of
Oh
the
yeah.
polyrhythm stuff is a brain fuck because you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to, rub your
Yeah.
belly and tap your head at the same time.
I, I was just about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really gonna say that. Yeah, rub your belly, pat your head, kind of thing. Yeah, I that I never could do. Everything had to be like symmetrical for me, and like my arms had to be doing like either the like you were saying the same thing or like the inverse of each other. I it was very it broke my brain to try to like be doing two different patterns with each arm. Didn't didn't at one point you start using three? You would have like instead of two point, or was it like a double edged? What was going on once you started upgrading like the actual equipment?
Yeah, so you can do 3 poi, you can do 4 poi, so you basically would hold two in one hand and one in the other.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can do two in both hand. Um, but they're completely different patterns when it comes to three because you have to learn how to do the patterns on your they teach it with so one poi is in my thumb and forefinger, my pointer finger,
Mm-hmm.
and the other poi is on my palm and my pinky. So you have to learn how to do the patterns on the other side of your hand. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of how that works out.
Would you kind of like juggle them sometimes too? Like you'd pass the third one between your two hands. I feel like right, and kind of
Yeah,
was
you
there
can.
like
You
some combination of
you can
juggling in that?
also just you can also juggle. I mean, it's easy
Yeah.
enough to just say, "Oh, I'm going to throw these up in the air." Um, and I have friends who can juggle five poi. It's very hard. And I think
Whoa.
compared to juggling clubs or juggling balls, it's a different feeling because
Mm-hmm.
it's not as quick. A lot of the what they call static props, like clubs and balls, static meaning it's not a rope. It doesn't, a rope,
Mm-hmm.
a poi is dynamic, right? Because it moves around and it's not as stable. With poi, when you juggle, you have to give it like a pendulum swing in order to get it up into a juggle, as opposed to a club where you can just catch it and throw it again. There's no
Mm-hmm.
there's no dynamic motion to the prop itself. It's a different ball game.
Yeah, I imagine because it's kind of lopsided, right? I mean, I never try to juggle them, but I yeah, that sounds that sounds difficult. So you would get up to four sometimes. Then you would have two in each hand. But did you ever do five or no? Just you do five sometimes.
Five is a bit awkward because there's
Like how do you
less
even do that?
space in between. Well, you can. I mean, you put it in between your middle
Your
finger and
fingers.
your ring finger, um, or at least that's how I would do it. But I think
What's
that
six?
when you
What's the
add
limits? Six?
shit, you could. I don't even know. I don't think that 6 is even a limit. You the
Have you? What have
limiting
you done?
factor is how much space you have to do
Mm-hmm.
something. Because at a certain point, if you have too many in your hands, all you're doing is spinning them, on your sides. There's not so much room to do an intricate pattern. And that's why the fundamental is two poi, is because it's just two poi in relation to each other and your body. 3 poi, you can still move in between the two on one hand and do some interesting stuff. But the further you get, the less space there is to move throughout the patterns.
Got it. But what's your limit? Have you done 6? What's your limit though? Have you done 7, 8?
I've tried 6.
What's
Yeah,
the most?
I've tried 6.
6. Okay. And after that, it's just like no, that's great. That's kind
That's
of
just to be funny. Yeah.
yeah.
There's not it does
But
you
the
don't get
goal
very far.
is there like a golden? You said 2. Is that just the golden like thing that
In
you
my in my
prefer to do, or
opinion.
is 4 like you did 3 a good amount? I feel like maybe you were just practicing, but you don't ever want to do like 4 or 3 like when you're at a concert or having fun, do you? I don't think so.
This comes down to really like what you're comfortable with. Like when we're talking about like if I'm trying to have the most fun, I'll just do 2, because that's
Yeah.
what I know. That's what I'm the best at, most practice. If I want to reach outside the box, I might do 3. There are different patterns that you can do that you can't. Obviously, it adds an extra point in there, so you can't do them uh, with
Yeah.
2. So that's a fun thing to experiment with. Obviously, you can juggle with 3. It's like the most fundamental juggling is 3 of something. Um, and then when you get up to 4, it you can do similar stuff as 3, but uh, a lot more complication, because you got to learn it with the left hand if your non-dominant is your left. So
Yeah.
that's where I cut
I feel
it
like
off. Is I'm like, that's enough.
enough of that. I feel like there's like an endless amount of possibilities with 2 anyway. Like there's like a whole lifetime's worth of moves to discover with 2, you know? Basically. Do you still practice on the regular and stuff?
I sometimes I
I
hadn't for
I
COVID. It was like a year and a half worth of not doing anything other than working. But yeah, other
yeah,
than
I feel
that,
that, dude. I'm way worse. I haven't done it in like 3 years probably or longer, dude. I need to get back on this because I'm just remembering how much I liked it in this moment, you know?
yeah, there's a whole. If anyone who's listening wants to get into it, there's a whole plethora of YouTube content for
Mhm.
how to learn. If you're into the technical, if you're into the dance, if you want to be a performer, anything basically you can find on YouTube. That's how I learned. Um,
Mhm.
some YouTubers out there like Drex Factor is really good person to watch. He has the biggest discography basically of tutorial content on YouTube.
Mhm. Yeah, what about like what do you get out of it? How does it affect the rest of your life? Does it, it's like a form of meditation, right? Does it help you feel centered and I mean it's a little bit of a workout. I don't know. What are the what how does it kind of play a role in your life outside of just doing it?
Yeah, there's a couple things. It's a form of meditation. It's something that you can get into. You relieve stress. Some people use it to work out. They
Mhm.
get that cardio in. Um, but then, deeper than that, it can be a spiritual experience. It can be something to help you with, meeting people, or something to help you with expressing yourself, or if you're an introverted person, if you do it in front of people, you know you can't help but be looked at, and so um a lot of the friendships that I have are from going to events and learning from people, um and then after teaching people, and kind of being a part of that community is what it means to me, at least, is the friends I've learned, met along the way, and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, man, there is a huge like spiritual aspect to it. I feel like I'm understanding the universe, the cosmos, like I'm learning all these like geometric patterns and my, like you're saying, you just understand like the space around your body better and you feel centered and then it does just pull you into social situations, but you also don't have to say much to each other. Like it's almost weird doing a podcast with you because we hung out so many times and we didn't even have to say anything. You know what I'm saying? Like 95% of the time I would talk to you for like 2 minutes afterwards or beforehand, but you and me are just hanging out, saying nothing to each other and just looking at each other in the mirror and maybe give each other quick pointers. But also you could give me advice. You could be like, "Hey, look at this," and just do it. And and I would learn visually. I don't have to. It's nothing verbal is required to go bond with a group of people.
I'll tell you a
And that
story
and that.
about this actually, because I have a good
Mm-hmm.
story for this. So I was at a concert when I was, it might have been even just as I was coming to school, with you guys, and it was a Papadosio concert, and I'm, have my LED poi. I'm in the crowd. I'm having fun, spinning, whatever. And someone who I'd never met before comes up to me, and he just right in front of me, watching me spin, and he looks at me in the eye, and he holds out his hands as if, hey, can I try? I give it to him, right? And he just completely blows my mind. You know what I'm saying? Didn't say a single word to me, and just at that moment, I was like, I need to know who this guy is. I need
Mm-hmm.
to befriend this person because, holy crap, he's really good. And he knew that, he was going to kind of spark something in me just by
Mm-hmm.
coming up and holding out his hands. And now I'm really good friends with this person. I've, been to a bunch of events with him, and he's probably one of the best poi spinners I've ever met. Um, so it's, yeah, very much like you say, like you don't need to say much of anything if you're physically dancing or expressing or whatever it is. You just kind of
Mm-hmm.
see how someone is expressing themselves, and you either relate to it or you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's like a secret handshake or something. This guy just immediately he saw that you had poi and just knew that there's going to be a mutual respect there. It's almost like a martial arts or something in that way. Like you found another black belt in your thing. I don't know. I think kind of like the competition. It would seem almost against the culture to give it black belts or yellow belts or a ranking system, but there is definitely an unspoken skill level, and if someone does something, you immediately know how many hours went into that. You know what I'm saying? You're like, oh man, this guy has put in at least 1,000 hours. If he can do that, oh my gosh, like this guy's committed to the art form.
And something on that is also, there are people who, the more that, YouTube is becoming more prevalent, social media, people are adding these different flow arts, teaching people how to do it. And what I've come to find is basically that someone who, like example for me, took me 5 years to get to a certain point. Nowadays, it's taking someone 3 months to get to the same point because they
Mm-hmm.
have such a wide, directory of like stuff that they can look at online. So I've met people like, you remember Noah from school?
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah, yeah.
learned he learned what I learned in 2 years in like a month or two. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I don't know. It's one of those things where you're like, you could say, and maybe it's like, oh, they did work 10,000 hours and they have, worked that much, but now you can never really tell. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
someone is just naturally good at learning.
Well, they at least it required a certain amount of focus and concentration,
Yeah,
or just
dedication.
their
Hmm.
dedication, something. If they might have gone hard, because I learned a lot pretty fast when I was in college, because I had YouTube, all that stuff, and the group there to learn from, and then haven't learned much since. But I mean, I did learn pretty at a fast rate for a moment, just because I was like obsessed with it every single day. So it's one of those things that can really pull you in, and just I don't know. It just really it's a whole like universe to experience. I can't explain it.
Yeah, a lot of it is like cognitive, growth. Like you put together how to move in a certain way, and it helps your mind out. It's like those brain training kind of things. You can get a whole lot of it,
Hmm.
a lot out of it if you try at it and get it. I suggest everyone try out some type of like juggling or something physical like that because I think it grows your brain.
Hmm. Oh yeah, you were talking about how fast he learned. It made me think. I wonder if you could put sensors in the poi and have like a feedback system through like an app or something where it shows you like all the patterns that you did, and then tells you kind of like how to make adjustments and stuff like that. I bet you could put some cool tech into some poi and have a really cool like learning system.
Yeah, speaking of, actually, there are, because I thought about this before about,
Mm-hmm.
the upcoming sensation of VR and all of this kind of stuff is,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure you can code some sort of props or poi or something in VR where you would get instant feedback. There's also, my buddy Noel. He has an app that basically, if you it has all the different base shapes, and you can say, I want this shape, and it'll tell you, here's how it's supposed to look, here's how your hand is supposed to move, here's the, what timing do you want, how do you want to do it. So there are like resources out there, but when it comes to like real-time feedback of what you're doing, I think VR is probably the next step for that.
Yeah, in fact, I bet there's already like VR games for poi because you just maybe not like as much feedback as we were talking, but as far as to practice and stuff, like all you have to do is set up, the physics in this little simulation, and then you should be able to do everything in there that you can do elsewhere. It might be a little bit like the weight of everything would be a little different, but I bet they already have that, man.
Yeah, I bet it feels really weird because you don't feel the tug of the prop when you're moving it around. So I'm sure you could get used to it, but I think that one of the
Yeah.
closest things is probably like the Beat Saber and that type of
Yeah.
thing.
No, for sure. That is similar. And they have like these staffs, these flow staffs now that are probably even more similar to some of the Beat Saber stuff. Yeah, man. What about I what's it called? The hula hoops. I almost blanked on that, dude. What about the hoop? I know you didn't hula hoop, but there's so many like pattern that are very similar between the hula hoop and the poi. I feel like they're the closest to almost. Um what can you say about like the what is hula hooping compared to poi, and how do they kind of intersect in their patterns?
Yeah, so hula hooping is, it's a circle, obviously. And I think
Mhm.
that when you're trying to do poi techniques with the hoop, the circle that you're holding, the hula hoop itself, is a guideline for what your hand is supposed to do. So, you know, when you spin it around, you can use the same theories in poi, like the anti spins and the whatever else. You just have to know that there's no string; it's just a hoop that I'm holding. Um,
Mhm.
I guess you have to visualize the pattern and what it's supposed to look like. That's where the mirror comes in, is you have to like kind of
Mhm.
get into the watching yourself do it.
Yeah, I feel like the mirror is more important for the hoops because they have to really get it down or it can look a little funny. But like poi is gonna look pretty cool no matter what you're doing. You're just spinning it around. But like the certain patterns, if you get them really down with the hoop, then they start to form like very crystal clear, instead of being like a little bit wobbly, just because it's a sturdier thing they're dealing with. Where
Yeah, and
whatever we do
LED
is gonna be
hoops are great.
oh yeah, yeah, dude. Oh, those are sick. But yeah, I mean, so the hoops have the similar, right? You can spin it around your hand or spin your hand around it in a way, and you can do the the pedals, the exact same pedal combination. You can even do the hands can roll over each other, the weaves, yeah. But they also have the ability to like grab it and like total. Like I feel like we always have to kind of like slowly move into a direction, but I guess we actually did a lot of like switching directions. I don't know. So but
Yeah,
they do
the
have the ability to kind of like grab onto it and like do, I don't know, quicker things with
yeah,
the
so yeah, that's the difference between hoop is a static prop, right? So it doesn't have
Mhm.
any string or anything like that. It's not dynamic. It doesn't move on its own. If you hold it out in a direction, it's going to stay there. So when they do things like isolation is kind of what you're talking about, where they can move their hand around the circle without the circle moving anywhere. And then
Mm-hmm.
they can do what's called linear isolation, where they're basically moving it from side to side without having to um, change the shape because it's a circle. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like sliding of a door, a sliding door moving back and forth. With poi, you have to almost force it to do that shape. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's you're working against gravity, but when you're holding a hoop, you can just move it sideways and it does the same shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And then what about the glove? I feel like do the gloves count as like in the same category, or is gloving like a different thing in your opinion?
Um, yeah, it's the same thing. Same. It's. I think it's a flow art. I don't think that it. I mean, it doesn't really have the same. I wouldn't be able to do like a poi move with gloving, but
Mm-hmm.
the concept of like you've seen people do like tutting and stuff like that, or even some sort of
Mm-hmm.
like hip hop, making shapes with their body. I think that those concepts can almost be translated to poi and hoops and all of that kind of stuff, where um, your body can only move in a certain way. Um, so the square, they call it nine square theory in poi. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure if they have a name for it in tutting and gloving, but basically there are nine squares, three up near your head, three near your torso, and three near your waist. And
Mm-hmm.
you can move your arms in a way that follow the edges of the square. Um, yeah, so I think there are similarities there.
Like a Rubik's cube, right?
Exactly.
Like a 3x3 Rubik's cube. Whoa,
Hmm.
tripping me out, man. I can like see the geometric shapes. I love all the geometry involved in poi. Like I swear, there's some. I haven't looked into it. I actually bought a book called Sacred Geometry with a bunch of shapes. I never read it, but like so I don't know why I don't ever spend the time to look into it, but I feel like there's something there, like some hidden key to the universe is locked within certain geometrical shapes, and there's some I've looked at this before, like 64 or certain like I don't know, there's some certain mathematical shapes or stuff that appear in the universe, like the galaxies and the atoms and all these different sizes of life will have the same types of swirling types of things. I don't know. It means something. I don't know. And I feel like poi is an exploration of like any like all the geometric shapes that the human body can,
Yeah,
you
I
know what I'm
think
saying,
the way
create.
that I think about it is that the sacred geometrical shapes are a mathematical representation of the physics of our world, right? So, just as the magnetic field around the earth has a certain shape and, different molecules have a certain shape, the connection between all of these different things in our world uh, is the same as the space that I can move around myself. So, like the flower of life, for example, would be like a representation of I can make circles in
Mm-hmm.
reality in all of these different ways. And um, it's just, I think the poi and all of these different props are like a study of using that math, the geometry in the physical air, the space around the human body. So it's, you know, very interesting. And like you said, it's
Yeah,
an
it's
infinite
awesome.
amount of things that you can learn.
Yeah, man. I don't know. People say like, why do we learn geometry in high school and stuff? And people like to say we never use that stuff anyways. But for some reason, and I don't know the reason, I feel like it was deeply important to learn geometry and like algebra. But I'd never used it ever again, really. But I get what people are saying, but I don't. For reasons like this, I'm like, I don't know, dude. Something gets unlocked in your brain once you understand shapes and like I don't know. It adds so much more mystery to the universe. Like the more you don't know, or something. Where you're just like, whoa, why do all these things have similar shapes and energy levels, and I don't know, and then being a part of that, like unlocks some sort of energy in yourself, and you kind of have like a deeper understanding, but it's like nonverbal. I don't know. It's really
Yeah.
bizarre.
It's like the Fibonacci sequence is seen in, in the leaves of trees, in the cells of or the neurons in the human brain, in the stars in the galaxy. And all of these things have the same basic mathematical representation. Um, so it's very interesting.
Dude, that's what I've been trying to think of, the Fibonacci sequence, dude. Good for you for knowing that, dude. I'm like the past 3 minutes I've been talking about this kind of shit, and that's the one I've been thinking of. What is the Fibonacci sequence? Like, what is that?
Um,
I
it's for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know what they would describe it mathematically as, but it's basically an exponentially increasing spiral,
Yeah.
represented mostly like a snail shell, coming in from the
Yeah, yeah.
center and slowly spiraling outwards, like even like what people would consider like a black hole, a spinning black hole, or something like that.
Mhm.
But all things in life follow that same exponential expansion. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's in shells like you were saying, it's in like atoms and stuff like that. It's in like galaxies. Yeah. And then I guess it's in poi as well too.
of
I
course, yeah.
mean, of course. Yeah, there's some move where you're like spinning them like up and down and vertical. It kind of makes like this vortex, kind of
You can also
kind of like
do
a windmill.
there's that, and there's also like you remember there's a the hand wrap where
Oh
where you're
yeah.
spinning
Oh
it, and you
yeah.
put your hands together and it wraps around your hands and it slowly goes to the center and then it goes out.
Oh
That's probably
yeah.
the best representation.
Dude, funny story about this, and I just talked to Blake recently, but I didn't talk to him about this. But Blake, my friend, I don't know if you definitely hung out with him once in college, but I was putting in a bunch of work on poi, learning all these different moves, and he bought a pair, and he just put in a bunch of work on one move, and it was the one where it wraps around your hands, and he looked like a freaking baller every time, and I couldn't even do that move very well, but I could do a lot of moves though, so I could flow, I could have more fun like dancing than him, and he just nailed this one move though. And so whenever people were like, "Oh, you two can poi," he would just like, "Yeah, let me show you." And he just nailed that one hand wrap move. And then I'd be like, "Oh, well, cool.
Yeah,
That's
that's
pretty
that's
sick, Blake."
hey, if you can master one thing, that's that's the best thing
Yeah,
ever.
yeah, no, like a party trick. He used to be a magician. I don't even know how to say that, but he likes to have a good party trick, which is, I don't know if anyone is looking for that. I mean, you can find some cool shit to do with poi pretty quickly. Like we're talking a lot about putting in thousands of hours and unlocking like basically dancing abilities, but I mean, you can pick this stuff up and find a couple cool tricks in like a week or so, and just have a lot of fun. I feel like meditating on a very simple level, or
And
connecting
one
with
of the
people
things
on
that I've been getting into recently actually is my buddy Noel is really into nowadays the smaller, more niche things like kendama or yo-yo or
Mhm.
a butterfly knife and or like pen spinning, that type of thing. So there are a lot of like really small niche things that um, I'm starting to really enjoy getting into because it's the same type of concentration, takes the same type of
Mhm.
learning and dedication, but it doesn't take a lot of space. I think that's
Mhm.
nowadays a lot of people have not enough space in there where they're living, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Do you remember Tie Dye Dan? He was into the Kadama,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh, 100%.
yeah,
I remember.
I, I spent a lot of time with Dan through like the some entrepreneur program we did right after school, and yeah, he made Kadama part of his like tie dye shirt brand, and he would sell them and stuff, and he was really into that stuff, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, it's like the ball on a string, and then you can catch it in a cup or two different cups, and then you can also catch it on a stick, and there's a
Yeah, on
lot
the
of different
spike, yeah.
combinations on the spike. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I forgot what It's yeah, so ken is the Japanese word for handle. Uh Sarado is pair of cups and tama is ball. So it's a Japanese art basically where they
Mm-hmm.
described, what it a lot of things in Japan is like, let's make a word that describes what it is. So that's kind of how they categorize that thing. But it's really interesting. It's really hard too. Um, getting the and the ball itself has a hole in the bottom of it. So when you try and put it on the spike, you have to kind of get it up in the hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not good at that. It's difficult for me just to hit it on there.
Yeah, me
But
neither.
I feel like the craziest one, not even crazy, but one of the wild ones I saw, like kind of near the end of college, was the tentacles. I saw someone at a rave with just like big electrical tentacles. And have you seen these?
Oh,
They don't even take much skill. They just look really
yeah,
cool,
they're
basically.
they're like what are they called? It's almost like a whip type of thing,
A
but
whip. Yeah,
yeah, I
but they're
forgot
like
what it's
wings.
called. Oh,
It's like a whip that kind of splits off though into like 12 whips, and it's like a weird like like insect. It's like a very like insect looking thing.
something fly. I forget what it's called. There's a word for what it is, but um, yeah,
That's all
it's
right.
basically it's basically a it's basically a it has a handle and it has a fiber optic uh,
Mm-hmm.
cable coming out of it, and then it splits off all the way down. So it almost looks like if you ever seen the original Avatar, the CGI movie, it almost
Mm-hmm.
looks like some of those um, uh, tentacly effects from the tree, where the
Yeah,
tree
yeah,
branch comes down and it has all the like look fiber optic looking offsprings on
yeah.
it.
That Sahelus, they're little ponytails. That's how they
Exactly,
make
exactly.
love. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's just like those. Yeah. Yo, they're actually making a sequel to that. It's coming out soon.
I saw,
After
I
like
saw.
after like a decade later, dude.
We'll see if it's
It's kind of
good,
hype.
if it holds up. A lot of people are saying that it's a little bit too late. Took them too long, and now the hype is gone because
Yeah.
there's a lot more CGI being used in movies nowadays. So we'll see. We'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
I remember that being like the most mind-blowing thing of all time when it came out, but then it didn't age super well. And people have pointed out to me like the plot is basically Pocahontas, so it's kind of like, oh, well. So I
Yeah,
was
the
just
colonization of
mesmerized
Native
by the
Americans.
yeah. So I was just mesmerized by the CGI. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the plot too much, but they gotta they definitely can't just put out a good movie based on CGI next time. So they gotta have a good storyline, hopefully. Um, I'm getting kind of off topic, man. What else? Is there anything else to just say about Poi? Or I know that you said you're an ISAT. Like, is there any more connections you've noticed between science and physics and flow sports?
Um, I'm sure there is. I think the biggest thing is there are a whole different range of props. A lot of the big thing nowadays is people are trying to figure out what the next big thing is. So a couple props that I know. There's poi. It's a ball and a string. You can have just stabs. You can have double stabs. You can have what's called a contact staff. It's just one bigger staff that's weighted proportionally. Um,
Hmm.
you can have a dragon staff, which is a contact staff that has spokes on the end, almost looks like a wheel, like an axle with wheels on it. There's fire fans that I explained earlier, like a ring with spokes coming out. They have uh, bugen, which are also called S staves. So some people might have seen if they've ever seen on the internet, there are people who do these weird looking moves with stabs that look like S's basically. Um,
Hmm. Oh
there's
yeah,
also hula
yeah.
hoops,
Those
obviously.
are cool.
Mm-hmm.
The S staffs when they do like the windmills and stuff, they look crazy.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks very creature like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
hula hoops, obviously, and then there's also um, what else is there?
Yo, I just realized this probably was used in warfare a lot of times. Like they probably could hang like those spiky balls on these, and you know, I don't know. I
Yeah, so
if I had a sword in my
the way
hand,
that
I'd probably
I
rather.
know, so flails, that's one thing,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
But also the Maori people themselves, the men would use weighted poi to train arm strength, and
mm,
their weapon of choice for hunting was basically um, like a weighted like machete, like a mallet with a sharp edge on it. So they didn't
mm,
necessarily swing anything around, but they definitely had used it to gain arm strength so that they could whack something, if they needed to.
got it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have a lot of reach. Like I would not, if I had a sword, I would not want to fight someone with poi if they had like, you know, some metal or something on the end. I don't. That would be
If
kind of
I
hard.
had if I had a poi that were completely made out of chains, you could probably um, wrap it around the sword and pull it out of their hand because the chain would catch.
Yeah.
That's like some of the applications, even with if you've ever seen, I don't know if it's Chinese, but there's like a rope dart. You know what a rope dart is?
No.
So it's basically a long poi, really, really long
Mm.
poi. So long that you can actually wrap it around your whole body. But they would basically have, instead of a ball at the end, they'll have a kunai or a dagger at the end.
Hmm.
And so when they're fighting, someone with a sword is not going to be able to hit them because they're, two arms or three arms length away from them, and so they can swing it around and whack them with it uh, from long
Damn,
distance. So
dude,
that's rope dart.
that would suck to fight, dude. Oh my gosh. You know that move
Yeah.
when like you switch direction with the poi? I can imagine they
Mm-hmm.
doing that kind of
You
move, but
stall it in their face or something. Yeah.
this is so random. But I don't know if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z. It almost reminds me of like these Dragon Ball Z people. They would have a tail that would come and like mess people up. It'd be scary. I don't know. Certain like TV shows and stuff have tails that work like that. It's almost like a giant tail dude, or like a scorpion's, you know, tail dagger. Scary, man. I would not want to fight that. Well, that's just random. I don't know. What about like the spirituality side? Usually at the end of the conversation, I ask a question like, "What do you think the meaning of life is?" So I'll ask that one, but then also maybe speak to, I don't know, like how poi has brought you some sort of level of spirituality. You know?
Sure. I think that it wasn't just poi. I mean, I think poi gave me an outlet to relieve stress and to learn about how I teach other people and get into flow state. And really, like, the best way that I learned how to teach people was to know how I learn myself. And it helped me in school. It helped me with a whole bunch of different things. And I think when it comes to spirituality, it's like just knowing that I can go and spin poi and be with myself and be in a place that I feel relaxed is the most important thing, I think. And it's definitely helped me grow as a person. It's helped me meet new people. It's helped me um, in combination with psychedelic drugs. It's been a whole experience. So
Mm.
that's one thing that I kind of have gotten out of it over the years
Do you
was just
do
learning how to
you
be with myself, and that's yeah.
do you believe in like a god or something? And do you believe you connect to some higher energy source when you're doing something like poi or psychedelics, or does that play a factor?
I think in short, yes. Um, I don't know what it is. Um, there's a whole bunch of different theories out there, religions, whatever it is. But I think that like sometimes when have spun poi in the past, it felt like I was taking inspiration from something that I hadn't seen before, you know? And the connection that I got with the people watching, it felt like they also saw that I was expressing something that was outside of myself. And so, if that's what God is, then yeah.
Mm. Yeah, man. I don't know what it is either, and I don't pretend to know, but I feel like it's definitely you're channeling some higher knowledge or power or something, dude, in those moments. Because we talked about all these moves, but like once you really start kind of flowing, as it's called, you these moments in between moves, like these like you're saying patterns and just certain ways of expressing yourself, it's greater than the sum of the parts. Like, if each move was 2 points, and you did like five of them, it wouldn't be 10 points, it'd be like 20 or 15. It creates something bigger than all these parts. And we talk about geometry and math and shit, like it just doesn't add up. There's some extra element there that I don't know what to call it either, but it is, I don't know, it's a greater energy than just what like I am as a person. Crazy. Okay, meaning of life. What's the meaning of life? And then we'll call it a day.
Oh God, the meaning of life. Yeah, I got it
Yeah.
for here. So the meaning of life is live your life to the fullest. Do what you love. Don't worry about what people think about you. Um, and if you end your life at the end of your life, if you feel fulfilled, then you did what you were supposed to do. And if you don't, then you still did what you were supposed to do. So the meaning of life is to just be here. And I think there was a quote from, I forget if it was Alan Watts or something like that, but it was basically a quote that said, um, people thought this life was a journey and a pilgrimage with a purpose at the end. And when they finally got to the end, they didn't realize that the purpose was actually to sing and dance while the music was being played. So that's kind of how I think about the meaning of life. It's not so much about the ending or your goals or getting there, but to enjoy the journey.
And I guess express yourself along the way too. Hell yeah, man. Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you over the years, and like I mentioned, I don't know if we've ever even talked this much, because there was a lot of just mentorship that happened non-verbally. But thank you so much for helping me, and then for talking about this really really cool subject. Out of everyone who was in that, and I love all those people, but out of everyone who was there, I remember thinking I hope that Brenden can do the interview, and you were down to do it. It's been awesome. I'm glad that you were the one to
Yeah, thanks
introduce
for
this
having me, man.
to my podcast.
Yeah, and if you ever want me back to talk about anything, feel free. Or if you just want to hit me up, if you're around town, Northern Virginia, hit me up. Whatever. I
Yeah,
think
man,
you
we
might
should
even
we
still
should.
have my phone number, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been hitting you up on Facebook, but I might have your phone number. Either way, I'll get it after this. But yeah, dude, I'll we should do one of these in person, and that way we can just talk about anything. I was super excited to get a poi episode, but next time we can just talk about, I forgot you were an ISAT too, so we can talk about a lot of stuff.